And the Rockets, you've got to love that they're this team that is always in the mix for stars. Daryl Morey is constantly doing whatever he can to try to land stars and try to bring in more stars. They were a landing spot potentially for Jimmy Butler before he went to the Miami Heat. They were trying to figure out a way to make that happen, and we were hoping that it would, because we wanted to see Jimmy Butler and Chris Paul and James Harden all trying to share one basketball and the hilarity that would ensue with that. But anyway, the Rockets were able to trade Chris Paul. That's right. One of the least tradable contracts in the NBA got traded. And of course, that's why we never say never. No matter how bad a contract is, teams can sometimes find a way to move them. So Chris Paul gets traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, in addition to a first-round pick in 2024 and one in 2026, and pick swaps in 2021 and 2025. That's what the Houston Rockets sent out. Now, the dangerous part here for the Houston Rockets is you're sending out those picks, and this has been a new trend, right? Where teams are now asking for picks that are later. Usually teams wanted them as quickly as possible. Give me that asset right now as soon as I can get it. Now teams are starting to get a little bit smarter. They're starting to project, hey, if this team is really good right now, we don't really want their pick right now. We want their pick years from now, when these players they've got at this moment have aged and they're no longer as good. So that's what we're seeing happening here. The Thunder are getting some picks coming on later. They're getting these first round picks in 2024 and 2026. And if you're keeping track, that means the Thunder have traded for roughly $1 billion draft picks between Paul George and Russell Westbrook. So we're going to talk about them more in just a moment. But what does this mean for the Houston Rockets? So this means that the Rockets are reuniting Russell Westbrook and James Harden. They're going to give the duo a chance, and the report suggested that Harden was a big part of getting Russell Westbrook. We had heard that there were issues between Chris Paul and Westbrook in the past, but of course the Rockets insisted that was fine and there's nothing to it, and everything is all good and all of that, and then they trade Chris Paul. So it depends on how much you really want to buy them saying that, oh no, everything is good and dandy. But now they've got to try to figure out a way to make that work. There's one basketball, okay, that was sometimes an issue with Chris Paul, but Russell Westbrook is a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands a lot. James Harden, also a guy who's used to having the ball in his hands a lot. So that's something that the Houston Rockets are going to have to figure out. But in this league right now, where we've got all these duos, right? You've got all of these superstar duos that are teaming up. It's the NBA Jam world now. We now have another one here with Westbrook and Harden and the Houston Rockets. I would certainly say that Westbrook is a better player at the moment than Chris Paul. Now, contractually, what does this mean for the Houston Rockets? Well, Russell Westbrook is getting paid a ton, okay? He's making $38 million this next season. The following season after that, he's making $41 million. Then it jumps to 44, and then $47 million in the final season of this deal. Russell Westbrook has a massive, massive contract. So this is a major commitment from the Houston Rockets to absorb that salary. Now, look, you can say they were already paying a decent amount of money out to Chris Paul, and that's true. But look, Russell Westbrook is this kind of guard that relies on his athleticism, and it may not look. This could be a really bad deal in a few years. I guess that's the bottom line. If I want to land my plane on that one, and it goes a year longer than the Chris Paul deal, so that's another thing to factor in as well. Chris Paul, looking at his contract, is making $38 million, then $41, then $44, and then that's it. Doesn't make that next jump. So it's actually could be a worse contract, but it really depends on how Russell Westbrook ages. If you're like me and you wonder, a guy based on athleticism, is he going to be able to continue playing at a high level a few years from now? Then maybe this deal's not going to look so good. But if you think that, hey, he's got enough skill to where he can still be valuable in a few years, maybe this is a deal that they had to make. Of course, they're trying to do everything they can to win right now and keep up with the Joneses in the Western Conference, which is growing like crazy. Now, Westbrook's contract is also going to line up with James Harden, so the Rockets are preparing themselves for perhaps a reboot at that point. Clint Capella will also come off the books in the final year there, so they're still going to have some moves to make. I still think they need another big. They do. Kenneth Faried did some good things for them. Even with Clint Capella there, though, they need something. In our first go round on this, Keith mentioned that he had heard that Tyson Chandler could be a possible option for them, and I wouldn't hate that for them. I think that's fine if you're playing him like 10 minutes a game or less. Watching the Lakers last season, we saw that he doesn't have a whole lot left. He did at the beginning of the season, but as the season wore on, he really struggled. What I do like here, though, is that the guys who the Rockets were looking at moving in order to facilitate a Jimmy Butler deal, and I'm talking about PJ Tucker, I'm talking about Clint Capella, those are the players that they managed to hang on to. Were these players that we thought for sure would be going out, and Eric Gordon as well, throw him into that list. So I like that they were able to keep them because those guys can actually be some really nice pieces around this new Rockets lineup that has Russell Westbrook and James Harden in it. Really curious to see what Harden's role becomes in Houston. I mean, he was basically playing point guard for a lot of his minutes out there on the floor. Chris Paul, I mean, he's not great. It's not like his natural thing to be off ball, but they kind of made it work. I wonder if that's going to work with Westbrook, and both of them can kind of be a little on the moody side sometimes. So we'll see how it all comes together. But hey, Houston Rockets making moves, doing what they have to do in order to try to contend in the Western Conference. And this is a team, like a lot of them that we've been saying, they're going to be right there in the West, and they're going to be another tough out once they hit the Western Conference playoffs.